I'm Amber Wilson, 29, and my relationship with my mother has always been complicated. For as long as I can remember, she's forgotten my birthday, including this year. It's become a painful tradition I've grown to expect. What she didn't expect was seeing the $55K Audi I bought myself as a birthday gift plastered across my Instagram. Within hours, she scheduled an emergency family meeting. Before I tell you what happened at that family meeting, drop a comment below telling me where you're watching from, and hit that subscribe button if you've ever felt invisible to someone who should have seen you. Growing up in Portland wasn't easy. Our modest two-story house in the suburbs looked picture-perfect from the outside, but inside, emotional warmth was unevenly distributed. My mother, Margaret, saved most of her attention and affection for my older brother Jason. He was her golden child, the star baseball player, the social butterfly, the one whose report cards earned prime real estate on the refrigerator door. I learned early that my achievements would never quite measure up in her eyes. I straight as were expected rather than celebrated. I sans fair victories were acknowledged with distracted nods. While Jason's baseball trophies sat prominently on the mantel, my academic certificates were tucked away in drawers. My 10th birthday was when I first truly understood my place in our family hierarchy. I'd been excited for weeks, dropping hints about the new astronomy book I wanted and the chocolate cake with raspberry filling that was my favorite. The night before, I could barely sleep, imagining how the day would unfold. Maybe we'd go to the Science Museum or have a small party with my few close friends. I woke up early and bounced downstairs, expecting at least a happy birthday banner or a special breakfast. Instead, I found my mother rushing around the kitchen, packing a cooler with snacks. "Good morning, sweetie," she said distractedly. "There's cereal in the pantry." I stood there in my pajamas, waiting for her to remember what day it was. When she didn't, I gathered my courage. "Mom, do you know what today is?" She glanced at the calendar on the refrigerator and her face fell for just a second before she composed herself. "Oh, Amber, of course I remember. Happy birthday, honey. But Jason has a really important baseball game today. It's the regional semifinals and there are college scouts coming. We have to leave in 20 minutes. Are we celebrating after?" I asked, hope still flickering. "Mrs. Patterson from next door will be coming over to stay with you. Dad and I are taking Jason out for dinner after if they win. There's pizza money on the counter for you." That was it. No cake, no presents, no celebration. I spent my 10th birthday with the elderly neighbor who fell asleep watching her soap operas while I read alone in my room. When my family returned home that evening, they were jubilant. Jason had hit the winning home run, and no one mentioned my birthday again. After that, I stopped expecting much from birth. When I turned 12, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I saved my allowance for weeks to buy cake ingredients. I'd never baked before, but I followed a recipe from my mom's cookbook carefully. The cake came out lopsided and the frosting was too runny, but it was mine. I stuck a candle in it and sang "Happy Birthday" to myself in a whisper. My father, Thomas, found me in the kitchen and his face crumpled with guilt. "Oh, Amber," he said, joining me at the table. "I'm so sorry." Dad was always the kinder parent, but he was also passive, unwilling or unable to stand up to Mom. He'd slip me small gifts when Mom wasn't looking or take me for ice cream after school sometimes, but he never directly confronted her about how she treated me. That night, he helped me clean up the kitchen before Mom got home, and we never spoke of it again. As I moved through my teens, I threw myself into academic. If I couldn't earn my mother's attention, I'd at least build a future where I didn't need it. I joined every academic club, studied until midnight most nights, and graduated as valedictorian. During my speech, I looked out at the audience and saw my father beaming with pride. My mother was checking her watch. When I received a full scholarship to MIT, my mother's response was, "That's so far away. Are you sure you want to leave your family?" There was no congratulations, no pride, just the implication that I was abandoning them. The day I left for college, I packed my car with everything I own, hugged my father tightly, and promised myself I'd build a life where I was valued. I didn't know then how hard that would be, or how the patterns established in childhood would follow me into adulthood. MIT was both a culture shock and a revelation. For the first time in my life, I was surrounded by people who thought like me, people who got excited about coding challenges and mathematical theorems, who didn't think it was weird to spend a Friday night debugging a program. More importantly, I was just Amber there, not Jason's little sister or Margaret's disappointing daughter. Just me, My roommate Kylan was the first to break through my carefully constructed walls. She was a mechanical engineering major from Chicago with a loud laugh and zero filter. When she caught me studying alone on my birthday freshman year, she was horrified. "You can't spend your birthday in the library. That's, like, against the laws of the universe or something," she declared, physically pulling me from my desk. "It's not a big deal," I protested. "I never really celebrate it." Kylan's face softened. "Well, that changes today." 3 hours later, I was sitting in our dorm lounge surrounded by a hastily assembled group of students from our floor, a store-bought cake with my name misspelled in frosting "Happy Birthday Ambar," and a pile of makeshift gifts that consisted mostly of snacks from the vending machine and cool pens people had lying around. It was perfect. That night was the beginning of my chosen family. Kylan became the sister I'd never had, and soon our circle expanded to include Derek, a computer science major who partnered with me on a particularly grueling coding project. We pulled an all-nighter to finish it, and somewhere between the energy drinks and debugging at 4 a.m., a friendship was born. While my social life blossomed, my family connections withered. I called home once a week out of obligation, brief conversations where my mother would pass the phone to my father after a few minutes of small talk. I rarely mentioned my achievements: the internship I landed at a major tech company sophomore year, the research paper that got published, the dean's list every semester. Experience had taught me that these things wouldn't matter to her. During my junior year, I secured a summer internship at Tech Vision, a rising software company in Seattle. It paid well enough that I could afford a tiny studio apartment instead of staying in the dorms over summer break. When I called to tell my parents I wouldn't be coming home, my mother was upset. "So we won't see you until Christmas. That's almost a year, Amber." "I know, Mom, but this is a really big opportunity. It could lead to a job after graduation. Your brother comes home every holiday, even with his job." I bit back the response that Jason worked at a local bank just 30 minutes from our house. Instead, I promised to visit at Christmas. That December visit was excruciating. Mom had decorated the house with all of Jason's old ornaments and photos. At dinner, she spent the entire time talking about how Jason had been promoted to assistant manager at the bank. "He's doing so well," she gushed. "Everyone respects him there." When Dad asked about my internship, I started to explain how I'd been asked to continue working part-time remotely during the school year, a rare honor for an undergraduate. "That's nice, dear," Mom interrupted. "Jason, tell your father about the new client accounts you're handling." I left Portland 2 days earlier than planned, claiming a work emergency. Dad knew it was a lie, and his hug goodbye was extra tight. "I'm proud of you, Amber," he whispered. "So proud." After graduation, I accepted a full-time position at Tech Vision in Seattle. The salary was generous for an entry-level position, but living in Seattle was expensive. I found a small one-bedroom apartment and furnished it sparsely, focusing instead on paying down my small student loans and building savings. Those early years were lean. I clipped coupons, rarely ate out, and tracked every expense in a detailed spreadsheet. Visits home dwindled to once a year, then every other year. Phone calls became shorter and less frequent. I maintained a closer relationship with my father through occasional emails and texts, but even those were superficial. It was easier that way, less painful than constantly seeking approval I would never receive. When I was 26, I tried once more to bridge the gap. I'd been promoted to senior engineer, and I decided to share the news with my parents. I called on a Sunday afternoon, when I knew they'd both be home. "That's wonderful, honey," Dad said when I told them about the promotion. "Does it come with a raise?" Mom asked. "You know, Jason just bought a house. Nothing fancy, but it's a good investment. You should think about that instead of throwing money away on rent." I ended the call shortly after and made a decision. I would stop seeking my mother's approval. I would stop comparing my life to Jason's. I would build my success on my terms and for myself alone. It was a turning point, painful but necessary. I shifted my energy to my career, my friends, and building a life that felt authentic to me, regardless of whether it impressed my family back in Portland. Fast forward to 3 years later. At 29, I had established myself as one of the top senior software engineers at Tech Vision, now a major player in the tech industry. Last year, I had been assigned to lead the development of our new cloud security platform, a massive responsibility that had me working 14-hour days and most weekends for 6 months. The project was a phenomenal success. We launched on time, under budget, and with fewer bugs than any major release in company history. The CEO personally thanked me at the company all-hands meeting, and 2 weeks later, I received a substantial bonus, a significant salary increase. After years of careful saving and modest living, I suddenly had more financial freedom than I'd ever experienced. For weeks, I deliberated on how to use some of the bonus. I had already maxed out my 401k contributions, added to my emergency fund, and set aside money for investment. But I wanted something tangible to mark this achievement, something just for me. The Audi had caught my eye months earlier when I walked past the dealership on my way to my favorite coffee shop. It was sleek, powerful, and exactly the color of the ocean at sunset, a deep blue that shifted between purple and gray depending on the light. I had stopped to admire it, never seriously considering ownership. But now, as my birthday approached, a day that still brought a twinge of sadness even after all these years, I decided to do something dramatic. I would buy myself the gift no one else ever had. Something extravagant, beautiful, and chosen with only my desires in mind. The day I drove the Audi A5 off the lot was surreal. The leather seats smelled incredible, the engine purred with restrained power, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I had given myself something my 10-year-old self would have been amazed by. It wasn't just a car. It was a statement to myself about how far I'd come. That evening, my friend Riley came over to admire the new purchase. "You have to post this," she insisted, taking photos of me leaning against the car, sitting in the driver's seat, and pretending to polish the already gleaming hood. "I don't know," I hesitated. "It feels like showing off." Riley rolled her eyes. "It's not showing off to celebrate your achievements. You worked your ass off for this car. Besides, when was the last time you posted anything? Your Instagram is practically a ghost town." She was right. My social media presence was minimal at best. I rarely shared personal moments, partly because of natural reserve and partly because years of having my achievements dismissed had made me reluctant to put them on display. "Fine," I agreed finally, "but I get to write the caption." Later that night, after Riley left, I scrolled through the photos. I selected one where I was sitting in the driver's seat, looking out at the camera with a small, satisfied smile. The setting sun cast a golden glow over everything, making the car's blue paint shimmer. It was a beautiful photo, not flashy or ostentatious, but quietly confident. For the caption, I wrote, "Today I bought myself a birthday gift that 10-year-old me couldn't have imagined. Here's to believing in yourself even when others don't, and to building the life you deserve." I posted it and put my phone aside, not expecting much reaction. I had fewer than 200 followers, mostly friends from college and work. But within an hour, my phone was buzzing non-stop with notifications. Friends from MIT were leaving supportive comments. "You earn every inch of that beauty," from Kaitlyn. From debugging code at 4 a.m. to luxury cars. "So proud of you," from Derek. But then came the unexpected. Distant relatives and family friends I barely spoke to began commenting and messaging. "Wow, looks like someone's doing well for herself. Must be nice to have that kind of money to throw around. Does your family know about this?" The tone was a mixture of surprise, curiosity, and in some cases, thinly veiled resentment. I was puzzled by the sudden interest until my phone lit up with a text from Jason, the first I'd received from him in months. "Hey sis, heads up, mom saw your Instagram post. She's on the warpath. Called me ranting about how you must be rolling in money while forgetting where you came from. Might want to brace yourself." I stared at the message, a knot forming in my stomach. I hadn't even thought about my mother seeing the post. We weren't connected on social media, but obviously, family gossip traveled fast. I was contemplating how to respond to Jason when my phone rang. The screen displayed a name I rarely saw there anymore. "Mom." My finger hovered over the decline button, but curiosity won out. I answered. "Hello, Amber." My mother's voice was tight, controlled. "We need to have a family meeting. Your father and I expect you here this weekend. It's important." Before I could respond, she continued, "And Amber, drive your new car. Since you were so eager to show it off to strangers, you might as well show your family too." The line went dead before I could reply. I sat in my apartment, surrounded by the life I'd built for myself, feeling suddenly like a teenager again, anxious, defensive, and bracing for disapproval. But I wasn't that insecure girl anymore. I was a successful woman who had earned everything she had. Still, as I stared at my phone, I couldn't help but wonder what exactly would be waiting for me at this family meeting. The 3 days between my mother's call and the scheduled family meeting were filled with a growing sense of dread. I found myself distracted at work, staring at my computer screen without seeing the code I was supposed to be reviewing. Twice, my team lead asked if everything was okay, and I mumbled something about not sleeping well. The truth was, I felt like I was regressing. All the confidence and self-assurance I'd built over years of professional success seemed to be crumbling at the prospect of facing my mother's judgment again. It was infuriating how easily she could trigger that response in me, even from hundreds of miles away. Thursday night, I called Kylan in a moment of panic. "I should just cancel," I said after explaining the situation. "Tell them I have a work emergency or something." "You could," Kylan agreed, "but would that make you feel better or worse in the long run?" I sighed. "Worse, I'd just be postponing the inevitable, and she'd see it as confirmation that I'm avoiding them because I feel guilty." "Do you feel guilty?" Kylan asked. "No," I replied immediately, then paused. "Maybe a little. Not about the car, I earned that. But sometimes I feel guilty for building this life so far away from them, for not trying harder to maintain a relationship." "A relationship goes both ways, Am. When was the last time your mom made a real effort to understand your life or celebrate your successes?" Her question hung in the air, and we both knew the answer. "Look," Kylan continued, "go to the meeting. Say what you need to say. But I'm on standby all weekend, call me anytime, day or night, and I'll answer. And if you need to make a quick escape, use our old college signal." I laughed, remembering the emergency exit strategy we developed for bad dates in college. A text with just an exclamation point meant, "Call me immediately with a fake emergency." "Thanks, Kay. I don't know what I'd do without you." "Probably buy even more expensive cars to fill the emotional void," she teased, and I felt a little lighter when we hung up. Friday evening, I packed an overnight bag, planning to stay at a hotel rather than at my parents' house. The thought of sleeping in my old bedroom, surrounded by the remnants of a childhood where I never quite measured up, was too much to bear. Saturday morning dawned clear and crisp, a beautiful fall day that belied the emotional storm I was driving into. I took my time getting ready, choosing my outfit carefully: dark jeans, a soft blue sweater that matched my eyes, and low-heeled boots. Professional but not flashy. I wanted to look successful but not like I was trying too hard. The drive from Seattle to Portland took just under 3 hours in my new Audi. The car handled beautifully, responding to the slightest touch as I navigated the I-5 south. In another circumstance, it would have been a joyful journey. As I crossed the Columbia River and entered Oregon, my phone pinged with a text. At the next rest stop, I checked it and was surprised to see it was from Jason. "Good luck today. For what it's worth, I think Mom's overreacting. The car's awesome, I've got your back." I stared at the message, unsure how to respond. Jason and I had never been close, not by choice but by the dynamic our mother had created between us. As children, we'd been pitted against each other, with Jason elevated and me diminished. They had created a distance neither of us knew how to bridge. This small gesture of solidarity was unexpected and oddly touching. "Thanks," I texted back simply, then added, "That means a lot." When I pulled into my parents' driveway at exactly noon, I took a moment to collect myself before getting out of the car. The house looked exactly the same as it had during my childhood: neat lawn, trimmed hedges, the same blue mailbox with Wilson painted on the side. Time seemed to stand still here, while my life in Seattle rushed forward at lightning speed. I was reaching for my overnight bag when another car pulled up behind me, a red SUV I recognized as belonging to my cousin Stephanie, my mother's sister's daughter. Stephanie and I had never been particularly close, and her appearance at what was supposed to be a family meeting struck me as odd. "Amber," she called out, waving enthusiastically as she approached. "What a coincidence. I was just stopping by to borrow some of Aunt Margaret's Tupperware for a potluck." Her smile was wide but didn't reach her eyes. I didn't believe in coincidences when it came to my mother, who had likely enlisted Stephanie as a witness or ally. "Nice car," Stephanie said, eyeing the Audi with a mixture of admiration and something that looked like resentment. "Guess the tech industry really does pay well." Before I could respond, the front door opened, and my father stepped out. He looked older than I remembered, his hair grayer, his shoulders slightly stooped, but his smile was genuine as he approached. "Amber," he said, hugging me tightly, "it's good to see you." "Hi, Dad," I whispered, surprised by the emotion that welled up at his embrace. "Thomas," my mother's voice called from inside. "Don't keep them standing on the driveway, bring them in." My father pulled back, giving me an apologetic look. "She's been cleaning all morning," he murmured. "You know how she gets." I did know. My mother's cleaning frenzies were legendary, her way of channeling anxiety or anger into something productive. The more upset she was, the more spotless the house became. Based on the smell of lemon polish that hit me when I walked through the door, she was very upset indeed. The living room was immaculate, not a cushion out of place. My mother stood in the center of it, a stiff smile on her face. "Amber," she said, giving me a brief, formal hug, "and Stephanie, what perfect timing, you might as well join us." The setup was becoming clear. This wasn't going to be a private family discussion but a public tribunal, with Stephanie serving as both witness and, I suspected, a prop to demonstrate what a grateful, attentive daughter looked like in comparison to me. "Can I get anyone a drink?" my father asked, clearly trying to ease the tension. "Coffee? Water?" "I'll help," I offered, following him to the kitchen, desperate for a moment away from my mother's penetrating gaze. In the kitchen, my father busied himself with the coffee maker, his movements careful and measured. "I'm sorry about this ambush," he said quietly. "I told her to just call you, have a conversation like normal people. But you know your mother." "It's fine," I lied. "Let's just get it over with." When we returned to the living room with a tray of coffee and the cookies I knew my father kept hidden in his study, Jason had arrived. He gave me a quick, supportive nod as I sat down on the edge of the sofa, balancing my coffee cup carefully on my knee. An uncomfortable silence descended on the room. My mother looked at me expectantly, as if waiting for me to begin a confession. When I didn't speak, she finally broke the silence with a question that cut straight to the heart of the matter. "So Amber," she said, her voice deceptively casual, "when were you going to tell us you're suddenly rich?" The question hung in the air like a grenade with its pin pulled. I took a slow sip of my coffee, using those seconds to compose myself. This was exactly the accusatory tone I'd been expecting, but hearing it still stung. "I'm not suddenly rich, Mom," I replied, keeping my voice level. "I've been working my way up at the same company for years. This was a promotion and bonus I earned after leading a major project." "And you didn't think that was worth mentioning to your family?" she pressed. "We had to find out from your cousin Beth, who saw your Instagram post." "An Instagram post, Amber, you'll share with strangers but not your own mother." Stephanie nodded vigorously beside her. Mom was so hurt when Aunt Margaret called her. We all were. Family should come first. I felt heat rising in my cheeks. I share things with people who are supportive and happy for my success. And they're not strangers, they're friends who know exactly how hard I worked for this. My mother's expression hardened. "Are you saying we're not supportive, after everything we've done for you?" And there it was, the familiar guilt trip, the implication that I was ungrateful for the basic parenting I'd received. I set my coffee cup down with a deliberate calmness I didn't feel. "What exactly have you done for me lately, Mom? When was the last time you called just to see how I was doing? When was the last time you remembered my birthday without me reminding you? When was the last time you showed any interest in my life at all?" My father shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Amber, your mother has a lot on her plate." "Don't make excuses for me, Thomas," my mother interrupted, her voice sharp. "I don't need defending. I'm not the one showing off an expensive car while my family struggles." This took me by surprise. "Struggles? What are you talking about?" "Your father's is at the firm were cut back last year," she said, as if I should have somehow known this. "Jason's bank went through a restructuring, and he took a pay cut to keep his job. Meanwhile, you're buying luxury cars and not even thinking about helping your family." I looked at my father, who was studying the carpet intently. "Dad, is this true, about your..." He nodded reluctantly. "It's not as bad as your mother makes it sound. We're fine, just having to be more careful with money." "You never told me," I said softly. "We didn't want to worry you," he replied, but I heard the unspoken truth. They hadn't told me because my mother hadn't wanted to ask me for help, hadn't wanted to admit that her golden child wasn't as financially successful as her overlooked daughter. "So that's what this is really about," I said, the pieces falling into place. "You're not upset that I didn't tell you about the car. You're upset that I didn't offer you money." "Don't be ridiculous," my mother snapped, but the flush on her cheeks told me I'd hit the mark. "It's not ridiculous at all," I continued. "You've had certain expectations for my whole life. When I was younger, you expected me to be invisible, to not take attention away from Jason. Now you expect me to swoop in with financial support, without you ever having to actually ask for it or, God forbid, express any interest in my life or achievements." "That's unfair, Amber," Stephanie interjected. "Aunt Margaret has always been proud of you." I turned to her, no longer bothering to hide my frustration. No offense, Stephanie, but you have no idea what you're talking about. You didn't grow up in this house. You didn't experience what I did. And what exactly did you experience? My mother demanded. A roof over your head, food on the table, parents who made sure you got an education. I'm sorry if we didn't give you enough gold stars, but we did our best. Did you? I challenged. Did you do your best when you forgot my birthdays year after year? Did you do your best when you dismissed every achievement because it wasn't a baseball trophy? Did you do your best when you made me feel like I would never measure up, no matter what I did? The room fell silent. My mother's face had gone pale, and my father looked stricken. Stephanie was glancing between us, clearly regretting her decision to be part of this confrontation. To my surprise, it was Jason who broke the silence. She's right, Mum, he said quietly. My mother turned to him shocked. Jason, you don't need to. No, I do, he interrupted. I've never said anything because it was easier not to. It was easier to accept being the favorite than to admit how messed up it was, but you did treat Amber differently. You still do. He looked at me, an apology in his eyes. I should have said something sooner. I'm sorry, Am. I was stunned. In all our years growing up, Jason had never acknowledged the disparity in how we were treated. It had been the elephant in the room, the thing we all pretended not to see. It wasn't your responsibility, I told him, my voice softer now. You were a kid too. But I'm not a kid anymore, he replied. And neither are you. We don't have to keep playing these roles Mom assigned us. My mother stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. I will not sit here and be attacked in my own home by my own children. I have always loved both of you equally. Loving equally isn't the same as treating equally, my father said, speaking up for perhaps the first time in my memory. Margaret, we need to listen to what Amber is saying. My mother stared at him, betrayal written across her face. You too, Thomas, after all these years, you're taking her side. There shouldn't be sides in a family, he said gently. That's the whole problem. My mother's composure cracked. I have done everything for this family. Everything, and this is the thanks I get. A daughter who flaunts her success and a son who throws me under the bus. Mom, that's not what's happening here, Jason tried, but she was beyond reasoning with now. No, I see clearly what's happening. You've both turned against me. Well, fine. I hope you're happy with yourselves. She turned to me, her eyes bright with unshed tears. You want to know why I called this meeting? Because I was her. Because my daughter is a stranger to me now. Because I thought maybe, just maybe, if you had enough money for a fancy German car, you might think about your family once in a while. But clearly, I was wrong to expect anything from you. Something inside me broke at those words, not in grief but in liberation. For years, I had carried the weight of her expectations and disappointments. I had measured myself against an impossible standard and found myself wanting. But in that moment, hearing her twist the narrative to make herself the victim once again, something clicked. Do you even know when my birthday is, Mom? I asked quietly. She blinked, thrown by the change in subject. Of course I do, it's in April. It's in March, I corrected. March 17, 3 weeks ago, the day I bought the Audi. The color drained from her face. I was going to call you. I've been so busy. You forgot, again, just like you forgot when I was 10 and 15 and 21 and every year in between. So I decided to buy myself a birthday present this year. Something special that would remind me of how far I've come and what I've accomplished on my own. I stood up, suddenly weary of the whole conversation. I didn't post that photo to show off or to hurt you. I posted it because for once in my life, I was proud of myself and wanted to share that feeling with people who care about me. The fact that you saw it as a personal attack says everything about our relationship. Amber, wait, my father began, but I was already gathering my purse. I'm done waiting, Dad. I've been waiting my whole life for Mom to see me, to be proud of me, to love me the way she loves Jason. I can't do it anymore. I turned to my mother, who was now sitting rigidly, her hands clenched in her lap. I didn't come here to give you money. I came because despite everything, I still hoped we could have a real relationship. But I can see now that's not possible unless I shrink myself down to fit your idea of who I should be, and I won't do that anymore. Without waiting for a response, I walked to the door. As I opened it, I heard my mother's voice, thin and strained. So you're just going to walk away from your family? Throw away 29 years over one forgotten birthday? I paused, hand on the doorknob. It was never about the birthdays, Mom. It was about feeling like I mattered to you. And no, I'm not throwing away 29 years. I'm just finally accepting what they've shown me." With that, I walked out, closing the door softly behind me. The sun was still shining, birds were still singing, and the world was carrying on as if my life hadn't just fractured along fault lines that had been there all along. I got into my Audi, the car that had somehow become the catalyst for this long-overdue confrontation, and drove away from my childhood home, tears streaming down my face but a strange sense of peace settling over me. I made it exactly 37 miles from my parents' house before I had to pull over. The tears were coming so fast I could barely see the road, and my hands were shaking on the steering wheel. I managed to navigate into a grocery store parking lot before completely breaking down. All the emotions I'd been holding in check during the confrontation came pouring out: grief, anger, relief, and a profound sense of loss, not for what I was leaving behind but for what had never existed in the first place. A mother who saw it and celebrated me. A family where I truly belong. I'm not sure how long I sat there, sobbing in my expensive car, but eventually I remembered Kylan's promise to be on standby. With trembling fingers, I called her. "How bad?" she asked immediately upon answering. "Pretty bad," I managed. "It's over, Kay. Whatever relationship I thought I might salvage with my mother, it's done." "Where are you right now?" "Parking lot, about 4 miles from their house." "Are you okay to drive?" I took a deep breath, assessing my state. "Not to Seattle. Maybe to the hotel." "Okay, here's what we're going to do," Kylan said, her voice calm and steady. "You're going to drive very carefully to your hotel. You're going to order room service, something comforting, not just sad salad. And I'm going to stay on the phone with you until you're settled. Then we'll figure out next steps." Her practical kindness was exactly what I needed. I followed her instructions, driving to the hotel with her voice in my ear, checking into my room, and ordering soup and a grilled cheese sandwich that I couldn't taste but made me feel better anyway. "Do you want to talk about what happened?" Kylan asked once I was curled up on the hotel bed, the remains of my dinner on the nightstand. I told her everything: my mother's accusation, Jason's unexpected support, my father's belated stand, and my final exit. "I'm proud of you," she said when I finished. "That took incredible courage." "It doesn't feel like courage," I admitted. "It feels like failure." "That's because you've been conditioned to believe that the problems in your relationship with your mother are your fault. They're not. You set a boundary today. That's not failure, that's growth." We talked for another, before exhaustion began to overtake me. Kylan made me promise to text her in the morning and to drive back to Seattle only if I felt up to it. "Otherwise, stay another night," she insisted. "The distance isn't going anywhere." I fell into a deep, dreamless sleep, emotionally drained but somehow lighter, as if I'd set down a burden I'd been carrying for decades. The next morning, I woke to a text from my father. "Can we meet for coffee before you head back? Just the two of us, please." I hesitated. Part of me wanted to refuse, to make a clean break from all of it. But the relationship with my father had always been different, flawed by his passivity, yes, but not marked by the same active dismissal I'd experienced from my mother. "Okay, Starbucks on 4th at 10, I replied. "I'll be there," came his immediate response. When I arrived at the coffee shop, my father was already waiting, 2 cups on the table in front of him. He stood when he saw me, his face etched with worry and what looked like a sleepless night. "I got you a mocha," he said as I sat down. "Extra whip, that's still your favorite, right?" The fact that he remembered such a small detail about me brought an unexpected lump to my throat. "Yeah, it is, thanks." We sat in awkward silence for a moment before he spoke. "I owe you an apology, Amber. Many apologies, actually." I waited, giving him space to continue. "I failed you as a father," he said simply. "I saw how your mother treated you differently from Jason, and I did nothing. I told myself it wasn't that bad, that you were strong and could handle it, that confronting her would only make things worse. But those were all excuses. The truth is, I was a coward." His honesty disarmed me. "You weren't entirely wrong, Dad. I am strong, I did handle it. But it shouldn't have been my job to do that as a child." He nodded, his eyes sad. "No, it shouldn't have. And I can't change the past or undo the hurt you've experienced. But I want you to know that I've always been proud of you, Amber. So proud. I just didn't know how to show it without upsetting your mother." "Why?" I asked, the question that had haunted me for years finally finding voice. "Why does she love Jason more? What did I do wrong?" My father's face crumpled. Oh, Amber, you didn't do anything wrong. It's not about you at all. It's about her. He took a deep breath. Your mother had a difficult childhood. Her own mother was cold, critical, much worse than Margaret has ever been to you. When Jason was born, something in her connected deeply with him. I think she saw him as her chance to be the mother she never had, and when you came along, she didn't have any more love to give. I finished for him. That's not it, he said quickly. She does love you in her way. But you reminded her too much of herself, smart, independent, not needing her the way Jason did. And instead of seeing that as a strength, it triggered all her insecurities about not being enough. It was a perspective I'd never considered. Not that it excused her behavior, but it helped me understand it in a new light. After you left yesterday, my father continued, we had the biggest fight of our marriage. I told her everything I should have said years ago, that her treatment of you was unfair, that she'd created this distance herself, that she couldn't blame you for protecting yourself from her criticism. How did she take it? Not well, initially. She locked herself in our bedroom first. But this morning, she was different, quieter. She asked me if I thought you would ever forgive her. I stared into my coffee, conflicted. I don't know, Dad. I don't know if forgiveness is even the right goal right now. I need distance. I need to process all of this. I understand, he said, and I'll respect whatever boundaries you need to set, but I hope, his voice broke slightly, I hope that you and I can work on our relationship separately from all this. I want to know my daughter. The amazing woman she's become. For the first time since arriving in Portland, I felt a glimmer of hope. Not for a miraculous reconciliation with my mother, but for the possibility of a new, more honest relationship with my father. I'd like that, I said softly. We talked for another, more openly than we ever had before. He told me about his reduceds at the law firm, a semi-retirement he actually welcomed, and I shared more details about my work and life in Seattle. When we finally said goodbye, his hug was fierce and lingering. Drive safe, he said, and Amber, happy belated birthday. The drive back to Seattle was contemplative, my mind processing the seismic shifts in my family relationships. About an hour into the journey, my phone rang through the car's speakers. It was Jason. Hey, I answered, surprised. Everything okay? Yeah, I guess. Well, no, not really, he sounded tired. I just wanted to check on you, make sure you got back to Seattle all right. I'm on my way now, actually, should be home in a couples. Cool. There was an awkward pause. Look, Amber, I wanted to say I'm sorry again, for all of it. For never standing up for you when we were kids, for accepting the favoritism because it benefited me, for not reaching out more as adults. You don't need to apologize, I began, but he cut me off. Yeah, I do. Because here's the thing, Mom's favoritism wasn't just bad for you. It was bad for me too. I spent my whole life trying to live up to this perfect image she had of me, afraid to ever disappoint her. It's exhausting, and watching you just own your life yesterday, that was kind of amazing. I laughed, surprised. It didn't feel amazing, it felt terrifying. But you did it anyway, he said, and it got me thinking about my own life. The bank job I hate but keep because Mom brags about it. The girlfriend I broke up with last year because Mom didn't think she was ambitious enough. Seriously, I didn't know about that. Yeah, well, we don't really talk about the real stuff, do we? Maybe we should start. For the first time in our adult lives, Jason and I had a genuine conversation. We talked about his dissatisfaction with his career, my struggles with work-life balance, and our shared experiences growing up under our mother's complex love. By the time we hung up, we'd made tentative plans for him to visit Seattle in the summer, his first trip to see my life there. Over the next few weeks, I experienced a roller coaster of emotions. There were days when I felt liberated, empowered by the boundaries I'd set. And there were days when grief overwhelmed me, not just for the relationship with my mother that I was mourning, but for the one I had never had in the first place. My mother made multiple attempts to contact me. First came the texts alternating between guilt trips, I guess 29 years of motherhood means nothing, and angry accusations, you always were selfish. I didn't respond to these, following my therapist's advice to maintain the boundaries I'd established. Then came the emails, longer, more reflective, but still missing the point, still making it about her pain rather than acknowledging mine. Finally, a package arrived at my apartment containing a photo album I'd never seen before. It was filled with pictures of me as a child, school photos, candid shots, moments I had no memory of, On the inside cover, my mother had written simply, "I was there. I was always there." It was a complicated gesture, simultaneously showing that she had, in her way, paid attention, while also defending herself against my accusations rather than truly hearing them. I put the album on a shelf and didn't open it again. 3 months passed. Winter turned to spring in Seattle, the cherry blossoms bringing color to the city streets. I had settled into a new normal, weekly therapy sessions helping me process my family dynamics, regular video calls with my father where we were slowly building a more authentic relationship, and occasional text exchanges with Jason that were awkward but genuine. My mother remained the question mark. After the faux album, she had stopped reaching out, and I had maintained my silence. It wasn't a permanent solution, but it was what I needed at the time, space to heal, to understand my own feelings without her interpretations layered on top. In therapy, I was working through the complex tangle of emotions surrounding my childhood. Dr. Reynolds, my therapist, had helped me understand that while I couldn't change my past, I could change how it affected my present. "You've spent your whole life seeking validation from someone who wasn't capable of giving it to you," she said during one session. "That's not your failure. And recognizing that is the first step toward finding validation within yourself." It was hard work, uncomfortable and often painful, but I was beginning to feel the benefits. I became more assertive at work, less likely to minimize my achievements. I opened up more to my friends, sharing vulnerabilities I had previously kept hidden, and I started setting healthier boundaries in all my relationships, not just with my mother. My monthly lunches with my father became a bright spot. We'd meet halfway between Seattle and Portland, in a small town with a diner that served all-day breakfast. Over pancakes and coffee, we were getting to know each other as adults. He shared stories from his youth I'd never heard before, and I told him about my life in Seattle, the good and the bad, the successes and struggle. "Your mother asked about you again," he mentioned during our March lunch. "She saw the photos I took when I visited your apartment last month." I tensed slightly. "What did she say?" "She said your place looks nice. Asked if you seemed happy." He hesitated. "She's different, Amber. Since your confrontation. Quieter. More reflective. She started seeing someone, a therapist." I was genuinely surprised. My mother had always dismissed therapy as paying strangers to listen to your problems. "That's good, I guess," I said cautiously. "I'm not telling you this to pressure you," my father clarified. "You get to decide if and when you're ready to have any contact with her. I just thought you should know." I nodded, grateful for his respect of my boundaries. 2 weeks later, an envelope arrived in my mail. Inside was a birthday card, simple, tasteful, with a watercolor design on the front. The card was signed simply, "Love, Mom," and underneath, in a hand that seemed less certain than her usual confident script, "I'm sorry." No excuses, no justifications, no making it about her feelings. Just an acknowledgement, 3 months late for my birthday but perhaps right on time for our relationship. I didn't respond immediately. I needed to sit with it, to make sure whatever step I took next came from a place of strength rather than habit or obligation. I discussed it with Dr. Reynolds, who encouraged me to trust my instincts. "There's no right or wrong response here," she assured me. "The important thing is that it's a choice you're making consciously, not a reaction based on old patterns." After a week of consideration, I sent a brief text. "Thank you for the card. It wasn't much, but it was an opening, small, cautious, but real." My mother's response came quickly. "You're welcome. I'm trying to do better." We exchanged a few more short texts over the next few weeks. Nothing deep, nothing confrontational, just small acknowledgments of each other's existence. It was a tentative beginning, a testing of new waters. Meanwhile, my relationship with Jason continued to evolve. He had taken a coding bootcamp, inspired partly by our conversations about my work, and was considering a career change. We'd started playing online games together on weekends, a shared activity that gave us something to connect over that had nothing to do with our parents' or childhood dynamics. As spring advanced, I found myself in a place I wouldn't have imagined 6 months earlier, still separated from my mother but not in conflict, building new relationships with my father and brother, and most importantly, establishing a stronger relationship with myself. When my friend Riley suggested a small gathering for my 30th birthday, I surprised myself by agreeing. In previous years, I had deliberately scheduled work trips or solo vacations around my birthday, avoiding the disappointment that seemed inevitably linked to the date. But this year felt different. The evening of my birthday, I drove my Audi, the catalyst for so much change, to Riley's apartment. The small gathering she had promised turned out to be about 15 people, a mix of work colleagues and friends who had become my chosen family in Seattle. Kylan had flown in from Chicago as a surprise, and even Derek had made it from Boston. My father had sent a package that arrived that morning, a first edition of my favorite childhood book, with a note that said, "To new beginnings and better birthdays, love, Dad." Jason had sent a text with a photo of us as children, sitting on a beach I barely remembered, with the message, "Happy birthday, sis, thanks for showing me it's never too late to change the story." What I hadn't expected was the small package that arrived via courier just as the party was winding down. The return address was my parents' house in Portland, but the handwriting was my mother's. With some trepidation, I opened it privately in Riley's bedroom. Inside was a small velvet jewelry box and a note. The box contained a pair of sapphire earrings I recognized immediately. They had belonged to my grandmother, my mother's mother. I had admired them once as a teenager, and apparently, she had remembered. The note was brief. "For your 30th birthday. I should have given you your grandmother's earrings years ago, but I was holding on to too many things I should have let go. I hope someday you might be willing to have coffee with me. On your terms, whenever you're ready. Happy birthday, Amber. Love, Mom." I sat on the edge of Riley's bed, the earrings gleaming in my palm, tears threatening. It wasn't a magical fix, not a Hollywood reconciliation. But it was an acknowledgement, a step, an opening of a door that had been firmly closed for most of my life. When I rejoined the party, Kylan noticed my expression immediately. "Everything okay?" she asked quietly. I showed her the earrings and the note. "I don't know what happens next," I admitted. "You don't have to know right now," she said, squeezing my hand. "You just have to keep doing what you've been doing, taking care of yourself, honoring your own feelings, and making choices that feel right to you." As my friends gathered around to sing "Happy Birthday," I looked at the faces surrounding me, people who saw me, valued me, loved me for exactly who I was, people I had chosen, and who had chosen me in return. Later that night, as I drove home in my Audi, no longer just a car but a symbol of my journey, I reflected on the past year. The pain and confrontation, the boundary setting and healing, the slow, careful rebuilding of relationships on new, healthier foundations. I couldn't change my childhood or erase the scars of being the overlooked daughter. But I could choose how I moved forward, how I defined family, how I built my life on my own terms. And as I pulled into my parking space and looked up at the stars visible despite the city lights, I felt a sense of peace that had eluded me for most of my life. Not because everything was perfect or resolved, but because I finally understood that my worth wasn't dependent on anyone else's recognition of it. I had seen myself. I had stood up for myself. And in doing so, I had opened the door to being truly seen by others, not as the person they wanted me to be, but as the person I actually was. That, I realized, was the greatest birthday gift of all. So, what about you? Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who couldn't see or appreciate you? How did you find the courage to stand up for yourself? Drop a comment below, hit that like button if this story resonated with you. And don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories about finding your worth and creating the family you deserve, whether that's the one you were born into or the one you build along the way. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and remember, you are worthy of being seen, exactly as you are.